Guys, this is Fast Track Friday. This is Sandy Williams from Educational Innovation 360. Today we're diving into what it takes to build a positive school culture on day one. What are you doing to make sure that you have exactly what you need to understand that you are a reflection of your school? The number one thing we need to do as principals is thinking about what is the school culture. You are a reflection of your school culture and what happens. So when we say coaches come in and read the walls, when I was working with Principal Amy, she was so nervous about what the teachers would say about her. But remember, if you have your open lines of communication, if you've built relationships with your teachers, and then you have shared the vision to where they will share the vision with others, then I think you've done the best you can. So we have to build these relationships to ensure that our teachers are our advocates for our school. You have to be in the halls on day one. So whether you are kind of similar to a coach, you're walking all the classrooms to see what the teachers need, what kind of support they need. You have to be visible. I remember working with Amanda a couple of years ago, and she would just be bogged down with all the paperwork. And I said, this is the time for you to get out of this office and into the halls. And so when I would do visits, we would be out in the halls, but I would primarily visit day one to make sure she started the school year off right, to make sure she was the face and she was out in the halls, in the lunchrooms. And so she would show and model that I am here for you. I am ready for anything that you need. What are you doing to communicate your vision and your values? So whether you have your phrases or your propaganda meal, you have to be able to convey your goals for this year so teachers understand and they know it so they can convey it as well. Also, what are you doing to model positive behaviors? Whether you're attentively listening, you remember things, and then you call on those things, or you mark them for the next time you see that teacher, you can kind of recall it. So being able to do that as well. And last but not least, establish your expectations when you're talking about staff, your PLCs. So not only do we know the expectations, we carry out the expectations because you have laid the groundwork. But remember, it's not in a silo. This is all collaborative efforts with your staff. Do you have a warm and inclusive space? I like to say, when you buy a house as a principal, you're buying a house and you have this ugly wallpaper. You only notice it day one. After day 2 or week 3, you really don't notice it. So the first time you go into your office, be very detail oriented in the things you see. What do you smell? What do you taste? What do you touch? Whatever. To whether it's your receptionist, was it friendly? What was the first thing she said? Right? Be very meticulous because you want to be able to understand that. Is the personalized greeting on the phone something that you need to change, you need to fix? How do you learn the names of people? How are you greeting people? How is the secretary greeting you when you first walk in the door? What does your signage say? Does the signage represent the population of the students that you serve and the families? Is it translated in different languages? And then thinking of who are on the bulletin boards as well. So this is the powerful message that is sent day one. Week 1 on who is welcome in our community, whether your bulletin boards say that or whether your messaging does not. It will be conveyed. I like to think of these 3 buckets when it comes to building relationships. 1, through team building. And don't let it fall off, right? If you are doing team building activities from the beginning, don't let it drop off. I remember working with Miss Tambra, and it was I want to say 3 to 4 years ago. And one of the things she implemented was, Teacher of the Month. And it was so fun. The teachers were super excited. And so she stopped after the 3rd teacher. And so when we got some reflections and surveys back, a lot of teachers felt kind of jaded, like, well, maybe she couldn't think of anything positive to say about the rest of the teachers. So now people were speculating on why she discontinued, and she just said she stopped doing it because she just was tired. And so really thinking about what are the policies or what are the procedures or what are the things that you're putting in place, you need to be consistent and you need to carry it out through the end. Think about how do we highlight the personal interest surveys, whether it's something that is even toxic. We looked at the data of one of our principal surveys. I want to say about 5 years ago. We looked at the data and we were able to determine that here were some red flags that multiple teachers were saying. So as a principal, you can either hide the red flags or the things that people were saying, or you can address it with the thought that we will all solve it, or I am working on this issue. So really being conscious of the surveys and marking some of the things you see consistently in your survey so you can address them later on. And then thinking about your introductions. What are we doing to introduce yourself to where it's very in depth, to where you are a model of what you want to see, and what are the games around that? So whether you're doing true, truth, and a lie, or thinking of ways to get to know your staff and what are they doing to get to know you. Co-creating. I remember I was working with a principal and she had already created the norms and the expectations for everything. Now, granted, it is good for you to have an idea of where you want to go or statements of what you want to put in, but remember, this is a collaboration process and it's nothing worse than a principal coming down and saying, this is what we're doing, this is what we said, this is what the PLCs are, and nobody has input. So when we're thinking about creating voice and allowing teachers to have voice and staff to have a voice, we want to make sure that there's a collaborative effort in rulemaking, as well as goal setting. When we're working with our individual teachers, we want to make sure that we revisit them regularly and we continue throughout the process. And last but not least, I told you over and over again, consistency is key. If you're going to implement something, try to see it to the very end. So I encourage people not to implement too many things at once. Family engagement and community is where we drop the ball in many of our schools. I noticed that many times I generalize, but the principals that I work with feel that if we could do what we can in the schools, we don't have to worry about families. And that is the red flag for me. That is me helping parents get over this barrier of open communication with parents. And so when we're proactive and we have these conversations with our families and our parents, and they see the welcome letters, they're more likely to read it because they know us personally. So thinking of what are you doing to establish that communication that's transparent with your families. I remember working with a principal and it was welcome night and she didn't want to be out there because she knew it was some parents that she didn't get along with. And so I was like, come on, let's go, get out the office. I'll help you with the conversations if it's a struggle, but you can't hide from the very population you serve, right? So really thinking of what can you do to get out there for the welcome events. Maybe sometimes it's the principal, maybe it's the AP, maybe it's the dean, maybe you're having coffee, maybe you are thinking of how can you build these relationships, but worst case scenario, best case scenario, you need to build relationships. And then how do you get family input? The one thing we do is tell families what we're doing, and we never get the highlight or the benefit of what they do for our community and our population, our school. And so we rarely tap on our family resources, and that's what I see as a deficit at a lot of our schools. You need to start day one to forging this path. Day one, establish your presence, be out, be front, help, and take notes so you can revisit some of the conversations. 2, first month, dig deeper in relationships. You're constantly building relationship, trust, games, activities, all to get not only teachers to know you, but you to know the teachers and teachers to know each other. And then 3, always think about your ongoing culture. I love to have an audit within the first 2 months to kind of see what the walls are saying. So kind of interview a couple of teachers, do some surveys to kind of see how well you've conveyed as a principal the culture. It is prevalent within asking a couple of teachers what their thoughts and ideas of and what the mission and the vision of the school is and where they're headed to identify, did the principal convey that well? So I hope these tips help. This is Fast Track Friday. Talk to you later. Bye.